going to go ahead. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and work on this financial statement analysis for you. Here it is. The reason why it does that is it needs a chunk of code to get going in order to make those predictions. Now, how does it make the predictions, you may wonder? And the way that it does it is it takes documents and it reads in the terms and it sees what words surround words. And that's actually what's getting recorded here. That's a big deal. Let's go to the next slide, please. Other way. Backwards. Back, there we go. All right, so here we've got our large language model in the middle. It's surrounded by all these documents that we're using, documents from the internet. An enormous amount of data, a staggering amount of data that we are training these things with. If we think about it, we're going to be pulling in documents on any particular subject written by thousands of people. Some of those are going to be really good. Some of those are going to be not good at all. Most of them are going to be average. That makes sense, right? That's kind of what we would expect if we're going to be training this model. Which means that when this spits back an answer, the answer that it spits back is most likely. Let's put a pin in that and come back to that in a little bit. All right, next slide. There we go. So I'm going to share with you the model that I use when I think about using ChatGPT or large language models in order to understand how I can use them in my daily activities to deliver value to my shareholders. So 2 tasks. First one is tool automation. Second one is what I call abstraction. Next slide, please. All right, tool automation. This is where we're using the output of the model as the answer. So you wanted to send out emails for you. You wanted to go ahead and write letters for you. You want to go ahead and perform some kind of an analysis on a document that you've uploaded. Piece of cake, we can do that. Also, I see some of my students here. This is pre-ChatGPT homework because that's going to be an issue that we're going to get back with. So in these situations, average is probably fine. Truth be told, I do not want my students weeping tears of joy because of the feedback that I've given them on their homework. It'll just get in the way of their learning. So an average response would be just fantastic for this kind of thing. The problem is that there's really no competitive advantage in it because everybody's going to be doing it. So what does that leave? Well, next slide. Next slide leaves something that I call abstraction, and that is a framework or a tool to help you jump to a higher level. So some examples are, for example, we can simulate our bosses. We can simulate students. I have simulated you guys. I run my lectures through it, and it tells me where students are going to have trouble when I go ahead and use this lecture. Okay? I see Chancellor King is not in the room. Is he online by any chance? Because I simulated him too. I was going to go present a proposal with a colleague. I had misgivings, so I simulated the chancellor and I ran the proposal through. He was very nice. He made me feel good. He listened very carefully to me and he rejected it. And so I said, okay, I'm not going to go meet the chancellor with you, to my colleague. She went. A couple days later, I ran into her and I said, how did it go? She said, well, he was very nice. He listened to me. He was very empathic and he rejected what we were going to do. So it's a situation, though, where this is not the end. It's actually the beginning of the process. Same thing with changing your lens. So when I talk about changing the lens, you can take your large language model and you can flip it and have it look at your data with any type of perspective that you want. So if you're not an expert in, say, risk management, but you think it might be useful to look at the data from a risk management perspective, it's the model to do it. You want to take a look at it from a symbol or semantic perspective, which is some of the work that I've done. Great, look at it. It'll pull all the symbols out. Why would you do that? Because then I match that to the mission and vision statement to see if they're talking about the same thing. Okay. That's another thing that you can do. I'll change the lens sometimes to a process perspective. And the model will generate, these are all the processes that are going on in this particular section. So it allows us to change our viewpoint instantaneously and simply, which opens up a whole new raft of questions that we can then go ahead and answer. This is where you guys are probably going to really benefit. Okay. One area of my work that I'm deeply involved is interrogating entire corpuses or entire collections of documents. Allows us to answer all sorts of questions beyond just one individual document. All right. And like I said, this is looking like post-ChatGPT homework is probably going to be in this realm somewhere, and I'll explain why. So average, in this case, is probably a great starting point because it's facilitating new questions for you to ask. So it's not coming up with the answer. It's simply stimulating you to come up with new questions that you then answer, questions that you haven't thought of before. Here's your competitive advantage. Okay, and your competitive advantage is students, because as a student, you need to be cognizant of this so that when you're at an interview, they say, why should I not pay you minimum wage and use ChatGPT? You could say, well, because I can add value to what ChatGPT delivers. You can turn to the next slide. It's kind of a summary. So if we take quality of the work that we're doing, we've got an average in the middle there. Automating the tools are really kind of where we're at now. All right. And this will be extremely useful. Particularly if you take people who are performing below average, these tools can drag them up to average pretty easily. And there are a lot of studies that show that, clearly, that show that. They also show that when you get on the other side, it doesn't help your good folks very much, as long as you're using automation. But on the other hand, if we start to talk about abstraction, then the piece that we need to look at is the value that we in here. All right, and so, for example, for my students, this would be kind of like a 1 point below a D minus. Why? Because they can just type in the prompt, copy and paste it in the homework. So the challenge for faculty is going to be to look and see what value did my students bring. Go ahead and grade. I'm going to leave you with one last slide because the question, of course, is, all right, tell us how to do this. Next slide, please. I have a theory. Students are going to be needing more work with these skills. Do we have any humanities faculty out here? Just so happens that these skills are what the humanities excel. So I'm wondering if that's where we're headed, to a new golden age. Now, STEM is still. And back to you, folks.
Thank you, Caleb. No, I saw you in the chat.
William Blair, he didn't ask a specific question yet. He was asking about that.
Perfect. I know I just saw a hand raised in the back.
You made reference to large language models and ChatGPT. Do you have, is that your field of interest, or do you have some experience or exposure to other AIs that are competing with ChatGPT?
I do. I'm not sure how well they're competing. My dissertation used something called LDA, latent Dirichlet allocation, which was a method of clustering texts before ChatGPT came along. So yeah, I am familiar with it, and I've also done some work with neural networks, which is what ChatGPT is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can we get a test on audio? Yeah. So can we just check, is it better if we're closer to the owl?
You try to speak louder, so we have to move it over there.
Someone said just speaking louder
Yeah,
can help?
louder and
Okay.
over there.
Thank you. Excellent job. Sorry for the technical issues. Yep.
Well,
Oh, there's another question.
perfect. I'm sorry.
Yeah, ethics is a big topic, and guardrails, of course, is often discussed. Uh, you mentioned modeling another person. Should you have to ask permission of somebody before you can model them legally?
Great question. I would say if they are a public figure, no, because their documents are freely available publicly. But if you are going to put them under overt surveillance and perhaps collect information that way, yeah, I think that definitely crosses the boundary. Absolutely. Which raises an interesting point. You have a boss. What if you want to model your boss? You may not have a lot of documents, but you sure have a lot of experience interacting with them. There's no reason why you can't fuel the model with that.
And if we change the gender of the boss to a her, then all of a sudden it gets even more.
It's even
interesting,
more.
doesn't it?
Yeah. Now, of course, I'll go back to what they said in my law classes, only if you're caught. But it still raises the issue. Yeah, excellent.
Perfect. Well, in the interest of time, thank you so much, Caleb. Very interesting presentation. Thank you for sticking with us through technical difficulties. I would like to invite James Regan up. He is part of the California Government Operations, Deputy Secretary of Workforce Development. Perfect.
On camera right here.
Yes, right there. It's right.
It's always fun to be back in school.
Yes.
Thanks for having me. Here to talk a little bit about some of what we're doing, building on what we just heard with some of the skills that we're seeing in public sector when it comes to skills and different roles in demand. So I think we can jump right in and just let's go into the next one, and the next one even. Yeah, nice. So ultimately what my entire job is figuring out how do we do these three things. How do we support safe and secure and responsible implementation of GenAI? How do we improve the services that we offer and make it equitable? And in a time of GenAI, how do we prepare the state's workforce for a generation of skills needed to thrive in a GenAI economy? How do we do it? What are the skills? What skills are going to change? And so it's a pretty daunting challenge for anyone in the room who is studying this. But also it's going to be a mechanism for all of us to prepare the next generation of the workforce. Some of you in the room taking courses and making sure that you are prepared and have skills that are in demand by the market afterwards in order to contribute in this arena. And so if we go to the next slide, then a little bit about what we did. We had a team of researchers, user researchers, that scraped job descriptions in both public and private sector, including industry leaders in generative AI, and came up with 7 trending roles. And then what we did is we did a little bit of research to make it so that, okay, what are the varying levels of the skills associated with those roles, right? And so we came up with these 4 levels. What are the core competencies? What's the foundational knowledge to be successful in exploring a career in these 7 roles? And then what are the emerging, refined, and the mastery level of each of these roles? And all of this, by the way, is publicly available. It's in a report we published, the state of California published in July. And so we can, happy to send a link out after maybe to the group, where it's a document where it includes a breakdown of the exact skills and knowledge that are projected for each of these levels, emerging, refined, and mastery levels of each of the top 7 that are trending. And so what I did today, just in the interest of time, I took a sample, I think on the next slide, of one of the roles, where this is just an extract for the sake of time, where you have like a data analyst, not an AI, a data analyst that happens to have emerging knowledge when it comes to macros, data manipulation, formulas, potentially some data visualization techniques, right? Some skills in querying databases, maybe in at least one industry standard programming language. And then that next level of refined starts to get into that Gen AI or more large language model specific, maybe some neural net capability, where you see the skills progress. So it's at least one programming language and statistical methods, but also understanding the data quality impacts to feeding information into a Gen AI model. So we heard a little bit about how the information that you use to train the model affects the quality of the output. If you train it with average information, you're going to get an average level response from the large language model. And so understanding the dynamic between the quality of the data you're using to train it is one of the pieces of knowledge we identified in the sort of statewide scan of skills necessary for a data analyst with a refined level of information related to generative AI. Same thing with the skills. All of a sudden, what we also noticed was a trend in some of the other soft skills associated with managing generative AI. Things like having a product mindset, which in our world means, you may have heard like agile implementation, right? Having a product mindset is very, very important, is what we found in managing Gen AI models, because you have to constantly monitor it for the quality of output and the quality of information you input to train it. Because ultimately, you want to come out with the best Gen AI product you possibly can, or best Gen AI supported service in our case. So in order to do that, you have to have the soft skills of understanding what it means to have that iterative implementation to improve the quality of the model over time, maintain the high quality of answers you get out of it as well. So that's a quick example, just if I was going to do one slide. There is much more extensive information for all 7 of the roles in the appendix of that report. I promise it's not like, I understand government reports that can get, like dense and long, and I promise this one isn't like that. It's like 15 pages, quick read. And then most of it is the appendix on the actual knowledge and skills necessary at varying levels of mastery for each of the sectors. Last thing I do want to talk about, I think on the next slide, if we move on, what we wanted to do in public sector is model a learning pathway to progress skills through, with a focus on upskilling existing roles to be able to manage and potentially implement and progress into Gen AI specific roles. I know a lot of individuals, there's a lot of maybe fear and anxiety out there about whether a Gen AI model is going to take over a job. Our mission, in reality, is that to use Gen AI as one tool in the toolbox that is available to support the team members we have as a force multiplier. If there's ways that the same team can become more efficient, we invest in them to get some skills and knowledge to be able to contribute to managing Gen AI models in the workplace, then that's what we need. That's the goal. And so what we did is we have some existing training pathways that we have in public sector, in particular state of California, right? So that critical thinking tools piece, we determined it was essential in all the research. Data strategies and human-centered design, that design thinking or product mindset, also essential prerequisites to be able to get to that next level of knowledge and expertise related to Gen AI. And so then we partnered with a couple of national nonprofits, as well as our higher ed partners and experts across the state, to figure out, okay, what is the training content for Gen AI we would want for like a Gen AI 101, right? And then we launched that in July in partnership with Innovate US and with feedback from partners across community college, CSU, and UC systems in California. About 2,000 people have taken it. And then we just last week released the next version. It's like a 201 that was for business leaders. It was less about what's the difference between conventional and generative AI, what are the unique risks associated with these new versions that we see. It was more about, here are some of the common use cases that we see in the workplace. How do you, as a leader in your organization, start to think about uses for Gen AI in your organization? What is a good use case for that? What are the risks? How should you be thinking about equity and bias prevention? How should you be thinking about workforce, the workforce and the various teams across, right? So this is also something, it's in the report we published in July, but it's the approach we're taking, at least for now, understanding that the technology is moving so fast that we're going to have to constantly keep track of it over time, including over the next 3 to 6 months and the following 3 to 6 months. And it just progresses so fast, so we'll stay on top of it. I think that's it. Perfect. Questions? Yeah.
Is there a current project that you've seen or that now has a significant impact on using AI in government?
There are some proofs of concept in progress. Right now, we have 2 that are in the health and human services space. We have 2 that are in transportation and infrastructure, and 1 is a use case in tax for the sake of customer service and like a amplified search and retrieve function. So I think we're going to talk a little bit about that in the panel later, not to get ahead. But there are some like early proofs of concept in California state government of Gen AI technology.
Now your classes, can anybody take those classes, the intro to AI and so on?
The classes that we are offering are mirrored in Innovate US, national nonprofit. If you're not familiar, they offer the courses for free. We did do a little bit of tweaking for specifically the state government workforce, but I think it's pretty close if you wanted to go on. It's at no cost. Other questions? Yeah.
Trying to understand your role in the California government.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're studying and designing programs that are turned over to others to experiment with.
To learn from, hopefully, yeah. Yeah, so my role is that I'm responsible for all of the recruitment, hiring, learning, and development for the state government workforce across all departments and job types. So it's a workforce of about 250,000, 2,700 job types or so. My background is mostly in user-centered design, software development, and data management. So even though I am in a workforce portfolio right now, I'm a business transformation professional that has a workforce portfolio now and trying to, how do we create that workforce of the future in order to make government more efficient ultimately? Yeah.
First, you have, they're very lucky to have you because you have
Oh.
it's a very unique
Thank
set of skills for the kind of work that you do. Like generally, we work for sometimes we tend to be a little bit behind. But a question, what are the skills that you see in government traditionally that may need to be upskilled or not necessarily displaced for new skills? And what are those critical skills that you see missing in government in a general way, not just in California, that you feel the schools, the universities, this college, for example, should pay attention to or focus?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? It's a good question. I think that focusing on what skills are based on our research going to be in demand, right? I think that a great lead-in by my predecessor here on the presentation around critical thinking and creative problem solving, 2 skills that I think are skills that we have as part of our learning pathway, and we're getting on time, but those would be 2 areas of focus. Also, we don't want to lose the human in human-centered design, which is a critical piece, regardless of whether you're using conventional AI or generative. And I think having that human-centered design component, user research, stakeholder engagement, community engagement, are all skills that we are going to be emphasizing for sure, all opportunities for upskilling, but even less technical skills associated with Gen AI, things like output monitoring, bias detection. You still need someone to go through and ensure that the user interface is designed in a user-friendly way based on their own lived experience. And so I think there is a shift towards skills first hiring as well, and lived experience in hiring, which is a whole nother topic I could spend all day talking about. But ultimately, it is going to be not only about the technical skills, and it's not about displacement, it is about upskilling and augmentation, for sure. And so that's exactly what the learning pathway is meant to address. For someone who may not have a highly technical background, may not be comfortable with some of these highly technical tools that we're deploying, then they have a pathway to upskill and feel comfortable with it, and then continue contributing at that next level.
I know we're running a little bit late, but there's a quick question in the chat that I want to make sure we can get to, and it seems like maybe it could be a quick answer, I'm not sure though. It says, which hardware PC is affordable for students doing a project? This is someone who wants to start a project learning model about agriculture and pests.
Cost is something that varies so much. It's one of the things we're learning through the proofs of concept that I was talking about. Not necessarily a good answer on that right now. That's the short answer. I think there's still a lot of rapid evolution of what the cost of some of the AI projects might be, depending on whether it's with a commercially available version of a tool like ChatGPT or others, or whether it's highly trained or tuned or completely customized output model that we would call it the foundational model, right? That's the foundational model owners have developed a tool like ChatGPT and Bard and others that they made available commercially. Whereas in government and maybe for research would likely have to tune or train or customize that model in order to use it for a much more tailored purpose at higher accuracy. And so it's a long answer that didn't answer the question, and I recognize that. But it's my way of saying, I don't know that there is a good answer on costing out there right now, because it really depends on the complexity of the project, the amount of data, the number of queries are hitting the model, what capabilities you're purchasing, and what version of the software you're purchasing as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hopefully that.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Hopefully you're.
So
Good.
thank you
All
so
right.
much, James. That was really fascinating. I think that's one thing that we heard in every single one of our planning meetings for this was that it's the learning of 6 months, and then the next 6 months, and then another 6 months after that. You are constantly learning this. So I appreciate that. We do want to tell you that we are sending out any information that James just mentioned. We'll be sending that out to you guys in the wrap-up email. So don't fret if you can't find it on your quick Google search. We'll make sure we send it directly to your inbox. With that, we do want to welcome Ebony Benzing from the North Far North Center of Excellence with Los Rios Community College District. She is the director, and I am an Ebony Benzing fangirl, so I'm so happy to have her today. She is amazing, and we are about to all learn so much, so we're very excited.
Hi there, everyone. Give me a second just to get my slides set up and everything. All right. Can you see my slide? It has a little electronic brain on it. Okay.
Looks great. Looking good, Ebony.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So thank you for that wonderful introduction, Liz. I really appreciate it. Hi, again, my name is Ebony Joy Benzing, Director of the North Greater Sacramento Center of Excellence for Labor Market Research. Today, my goal is really to share an overview of the impact of generative AI on the Sacramento workforce and how it's showing up in our jobs. But before we get into that, let me make sure I got my little clicks going. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Centers of Excellence. California community colleges need to ensure that career education programs provide learners with skills relevant to regional and statewide economies. The COEs provide labor market data and information to help colleges respond to regional workforce needs. This is a map of our COE network. There are 8 regional COEs and a statewide center, and our collective mission is to support the development of career education programs that lead to in-demand, high-skill, and living wage jobs. So for my presentation today, I've got like 3 main topic areas I'm going to take you through. We're going to start with a look at the Sacramento tech scene, followed by a dive into international trends related to the use of generative AI in the workplace. And then we'll wrap up with an examination of generative AI job postings in Sacramento. So first up, we're going to look at Sacramento's tech employment overall. So when it comes to the tech industry, there are two different ways to count employment. First, there are jobs that are employed by technology companies in the tech sector. This includes tech professionals as well as business roles like sales, marketing, finance, and HR. Counting tech jobs in this way shows that in 2023, Sacramento's tech scene contained over 27,000 jobs in 39 industries that are related to information technology. The other way to count tech employment is to focus on the number of jobs held by professionals working in technology roles like IT support, software development, network administration, etc. If we focus only on jobs in tech occupations, there were more than 43,000 jobs in Sacramento in 2023. Only about 26% of Sacramento's tech occupation jobs are employed within our tech sector, which means that 74% of the tech employment is found elsewhere, and it's in sectors like state and local government, business offices, and the education sector. This slide shows the historic and projected employment changes in Sacramento's tech industry by subsector. There are a couple of numbers at the top of columns, and that represents the total tech employment across 4 subsectors, which includes IT tech services, tech manufacturing, software, and then telecommunications, which also mixes in internet and data hosting. In any given year, employment in the IT tech services subsector represents about half of Sacramento's overall tech sector employment. The IT tech service subsector includes custom programming and system design services, as well as maintenance and repair and training centers. The next largest share of employment within our tech sector is found in the telecom subsector. When looking at the sector as a whole over the last 5 years, we've seen an 8% decline in employment. This translates to a loss of about 2,500 jobs since 2018. These declines were mostly due to job losses in the IT tech services and the telecommunications subsectors. Only one subsector saw job growth during this time, and that was software development, which added about 450 jobs in the last 5 years. Looking forward, employment overall is expected to remain stable, with losses in some subsectors, sorry, the word keeps coming up, subsectors like telecommunications being offset by gains in others, like in IT tech and software development. On this slide, lots of colors, so I'm going to explain it. I wanted to quickly highlight occupations of interest within Sacramento. There are 4 groups which show IT occupations that have the most jobs, high level of employment concentration, occupations that are projected to have the most growth, and occupations that are projected to have the fastest growth over the next 5 years. The highlighted colors are repeated occupations across 4 groups. So for instance, you see yellow, that's for a computer user support specialist. I'm just going to talk briefly about 2 occupations that stand out here. First up, computer user support specialist. It appears in 2 categories. It's in the category with the most jobs and the high employment concentration category. What this suggests to me is that this particular occupation is a key occupation for employment in Sacramento, and it's important to ensure continuous workforce supply into the occupation. The other occupation I want to highlight is software developers. That appears in 3 categories: most jobs, most projected job growth, and then fastest projected job growth. Our region is expected to see a significant increase in demand for software developers, which is primarily driven by increased demand across the tech sector here, but then also from state government. So next, I want to go into the impact of Gen AI on the labor market. This part of my presentation is really informed by a lot of reading that I've done over the last few weeks. And I'm just going to start by highlighting a couple of, or not a couple, it's like a list of articles that I found online that kind of caught my eye. So one, if you search for AI in the news at all, there's just tons and tons and tons of reporting on it. I pulled a couple of recent headlines that have caught my eye and sorted them into a couple of different topic areas. And as you can see, AI has touched nearly every aspect of our lives. Headlines are capturing the hope for AI, as well as a dash of reality and then some of the concern. One of the very real concerns is the fear of having your job replaced by technology. A recent report from McKinsey suggests that existing generative AI already has the potential to disrupt our workforce, with an estimated 30% of workers experiencing a disruption to at least 50% of the work they perform. This could possibly lead to job losses or weaken demand for skills that were once highly sought after. But on the flip side, generative AI brings with it the possibility of complementing or enhancing workers' skill sets, enabling them to be much more productive and efficient at their jobs. The McKinsey article also points out that we are not well prepared for the potential risk or opportunities that generative AI presents. These technologies are rolling out faster than we have the ability to create an environment that ultimately provides protections and supports for implementing generative AI in the workplace. Next up, I would like to show a few survey insights from Simform. In 2023, Simform, which is a product engineering company based in San Francisco, conducted a survey of about 656 business leaders across the world to understand current and planned adoption of generative AI tools. Leaders represent business in 8 key sectors, which includes technology, education technology, e-commerce and retail, marketing, healthcare, financial services, and hospitality. And approximately 41% of respondents were based here in North America. The majority of respondents said that they use generative AI for work, with more than 3/4 using these tools for work alone or mixing it for outside of work. These organizations have already begun to integrate generative AI into their business functions, with 71% applying Gen AI tools for up to 4 business functions. And survey respondents said that the main drivers behind incorporating Gen AI into their business functions was to optimize business processes, employee productivity, and to reduce business costs. In terms of which tools are being used, ChatGPT was really up there with named by 90% of the respondents, followed by DALL-E, which is an image generator. And business leaders said that generative AI tools were typically being used to generate new code or to complete it, followed by the use of natural language processing for chatbots and language translation, and then data preparation. This chart shows where businesses are typically applying Gen AI tools. 75% apply it to marketing and communications, IT, and sales and customer service. And when asked about their challenges related to generative AI, 44% of business leaders reported struggling with acquiring generative AI expertise. This suggests a need for skill development. For the last part of my presentation, we'll take a look at how generative AI is showing up in Sacramento job postings. To identify how Gen AI is showing up in our job postings, I focused on searching for skill sets instead of occupations and job titles, which is how I typically conduct these searches. Focusing on skills instead of occupations allowed me to identify a broad range of job roles that might use Gen AI tools. I looked at job advertisements posted online between January 2023 and October 2024, and I was able to identify more than 2,200 postings from nearly 500 employers here in Greater Sacramento. 40% of these postings were directly related to tech occupations, which translates to slightly more than 900 job postings in the last 22 months. The other 60% were for non-technology related positions. So this slide, so the next few slides look very similar to this. The title at the top changes every single time. But the next few slides provide list of employers, occupations, job titles, and skills related to generative AI here in Sacramento. The lists are separated into two categories. You've got like your tech professionals in the blue table, and then you have your non-tech professionals in the orange. Here we have a list of employers searching for workers with generative AI skill sets, again, sorted by tech and non-tech occupations. And then commonalities are highlighted in yellow. So you'll see that there's a lot of commonalities in terms of like what employers are looking for different types of occupations in these buckets. These lists show the occupations with the most generative AI job postings. On the technology side or the tech occupation side, data scientists and software developers rose to the top, of course. And then on the non-tech side, it's a mix of management, sales, marketing roles, as well as accountants. I also started an occupation on here because I thought it was really interesting for it to show up on this list, post-secondary teachers. When I took a deeper dive into that occupation, it showed that local post-secondary institutions like Los Rios, William Jessup, and UC Davis are searching for full and part-time faculty with knowledge and experience related to generative AI tools. These lists show job titles related to Gen AI. Tech occupation side is a mix of data scientists and data architects. The non-tech side is a mix of roles, including business analysts, writers, project managers, design staff, sales, and customer service. Again, I did start a job title on here because it caught my eye, something really interesting. The job title responsible engineers represents a mix of artificial intelligence advisors, consultants, and management roles from Accenture. And their primary goal is to develop AI standards and policies for the company and their clients. These charts show or compare the employer preferences for education and experience sorted by tech and non-tech occupations. On the left-hand side, we have our education. The education level that's most commonly preferred related to these jobs is a bachelor's degree for both tech and non-tech roles. On the right-hand side, we have experience. Experience is a little bit more of a mixed bag. For tech professionals, employers are looking for individuals with a decent amount of work experience, ranging from a minimum of 4 to 6 years, all the way up to at least 10 years of experience for these roles. When it comes to the non-tech positions, employers are looking for individuals with a minimum of around 2 to 3 years, up to about 4 to 6 years in general. This slide shows the top specialized skills related to Gen AI. Commonalities, again, are highlighted in yellow. On the left-hand side of the screen, tech occupation skill sets are, no surprise, centered around tech skills. But what I did find really interesting was how many of these tech skills are showing up for non-tech occupations. These lists look nearly the same, suggesting that employers are looking for higher levels of technology proficiency and skill sets among non-tech workers when it comes to using generative AI tools. And last, small little title change again, this shows the specific software and technical competencies related to generative AI job postings. Again, commonalities are highlighted in yellow. One thing I do want to call out is that very, very few employers provide the names of generative AI tools that they are using in the workplace and are instead typically mentioning applications of the tools like chatbots and dashboards. When it was listed, ChatGPT only showed up in 19 of the 2,200 job postings. So again, it's really centered around specific skill sets that are related to being able to use these tools. This is kind of coming to the end of my presentation. To close out, I just want to remind you of a few key points. The demand for tech employment across Sacramento is significant. There are more than 3,900 job openings each year for the next 5 years across 19 tech occupations here in Sacramento. The long-term impact of artificial intelligence on jobs is really unclear, but it has the potential to make workers more efficient. According to Bill Gates, AI is great for white-collar workers and coders. And lastly, when it comes to how generative AI is showing up in Sacramento jobs, there aren't a whole lot of specific job titles hinting at a need for specialized roles, but rather there are thousands of positions requiring some level of proficiency and experience with generative AI to be able to complete the work task. Because of this, generative AI represents an opportunity for reskilling and upskilling our workforce. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, there's my email address. You can call me. It's probably better to email me. I respond much quicker over email. And that's it. I'm gonna go ahead and exit out of this and stop sharing my screen and open up the floor for questions.
Thanks for the question.
Okay,
Can you hear me okay? Or is it
I
wrong?
can.
Question, because in hearing your approach on kind of finding the common skill sets on Sacramento-based job postings, I was wondering if you found a trend that it was mostly, like, for example, a Gen AI specific job versus a job type that was not Gen AI specific, but looking for Gen AI related skills.
The trend, especially around the non-tech occupations, is what you said, the latter part of. So it's using those tools specifically. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to dive too much into like the technology job titles, so the technical positions. But just from kind of like a close read, it's like a little bit of a mix. And it seems like with the architecture and stuff like that, there's a lot more opportunity in terms of being able to build those tools and then also kind of test them out with the technology occupations, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Perfect. Did we have any? Oh, perfect. One more question in the room.
Yes, I was curious to know, in studying the job, you said you used data January 23, October 24. If I recall correctly, there were like 500,000 jobs or so in that study. I was curious the sources, Cal jobs or something else.
Yeah, give me 1 second. Let me open up my Excel file and I can tell you where it's sourced from. So I use Lightcast, which has a job postings tool analyzer that does kind of basically scraping across multiple job sites. And the job sites that were listed in this, let me find it, all job postings. It's taking a minute to open up. I'm looking for it. It's somewhere. So Indeed, Simply Hired. There's some recruiter networks that are listed on here. CA.gov is another one that's on here. A lot of recruiter networks. So it's kind of a mix all over the place. In my experience with Lightcast and how they scrape job postings, sometimes capturing government jobs is a little bit challenging for them. I don't tend to see a lot of job postings from Cal HR in this analysis. They tend to hit up more of the kind of like privately ran sites and stuff like that. So
Thank you.
yeah, of course.
Did we have any questions in the chat? Okay. Well, thank you, Ebony, for your time and explaining all of that to us. It was striking to me that every time we specifically here today to talk about how AI is going to affect ICT, but on multiple of your panels, it looked like it was going to affect every job. So it's something to keep in mind as we go forward. There's a lot of interest in keeping experts in the field and hiring them on, which is a good opportunity for you guys in this room. With that, I would like to offer to Caitlin to lead our panel discussion.
Thank you so much. So one thing that we do at Valley Vision is we often schedule 45-minute meetings instead of an hour, because we care about everyone's spine health and taking a break and standing up and stretching. So I'm gonna give everyone a sweet little 2-minute break to stand, stretch. We have snacks that I encourage you to eat all of so that we don't have to carry them out later, selfishly. So please grab a beverage, grab a snack, and I'm gonna encourage our panel members to slowly meander up here to the front and grab a seat, but we'll give everyone a couple minutes break here.
Yes.
Yeah. No, it wasn't. Right.
Yes, I haven't.
Yes.
Thank you for Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been 4 months too.
Are you from DC originally, or are you?
Senior college.
This fun time.
Want water?
Yes, it's sort of the city center of South.
Well,
Maybe.
How many people do you think live in the Sacramento region? I'm not gonna. California has so many. No, or they were just.
Google, how many people live in New York City?
well,
There we go, using AI.
you're the.
Sacramento, Brooksville,
Long bridge idea.
Yes.
No, we're all sharing that.
Yeah.
Now.
I'm an independent applications. Sorry. I was just trying to say.
Yeah, I know how that goes. The last minute.
Really?
I'm just working on it.
That'll be the day.
I know it's more done.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about.
I know.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, let's go ahead and jump back into things. You're welcome for the incredibly lengthy break we just took. But I hope that everybody got a chance to grab a snack, and please feel free to meander on. And sorry to folks at home, I can't virtually give you any chips or cookies, but maybe in the future when I really, it's the extra mile to get there. Awesome. So I want to kind of briefly introduce all of our panelists here today and jump into some of the questions. We're joined here, as we saw earlier, by James Regan from the California Government Operations Agency. He's a Deputy Secretary of Workforce Development. We're joined by Joel Meyer, the CEO and President of CyberCrowd. Also joined here in person by Jimena Gates Hartsock, CEO and co-founder of Build Within, who flew from DC to be at this event today. So thank you so much, Jimena. Just want to mention that. And also joined by Dr. Jeffrey Mrazek, CEO of Mrazek Global. And we are also joined online by Laura Blue, Creative Director and Senior Managing Editor of ServiceNow. And we also, one of our panelists is having some technical difficulties getting on, I believe, but Caprice Post, the Chief Technology Strategist of Microsoft, should be joining us today. So we will pass questions to her when she comes on. But to kick our panel off here today, I wanted to ask our panelists to just.
You wanna either project a little louder or come a little closer.
If you're in high school, you'd think that my projection skills would have stuck with me 10 years ago, but I'll try and do my teacher proud. So to kick us off, I'd like to ask our panelists to please provide a brief overview of your organization, your role and some of the services you provide, really just give us a background of your organization and your workforce. And I will kick it off in order here. We'll switch things up as we move forward. I'll kick it off to you first, Dr.
Hello, my name is Dr. Jeff Marizik, and I'm an independent educational consultant. So I've been working in the community college for over 20 years as an adjunct faculty, and I'm a prior community college dean at the California Community College Chancellor's Office. I worked there about 5 years in workforce and economic development. Nowadays, I work in ed tech, so I work through some of the grants that are available, Perkins, Strong Workforce, and others, kind of connecting industry partners to our education partners, really around ed tech. So think about the metaverse, AR, VR, AI, how's that coming into the classroom and how's that supporting teachers and learning? So that's kind of the space I'm in, trying to help connect those development opportunities. And I also play around with this stuff as well. I'm trying to build an app called Smart Start AI to support first-time home buyers. There's racial and economic disparities, so we're hoping to build and use AI to feed some of those opportunities and create more home ownership. I'm a solopreneur, and I work with a lot of folks through distributed networks.
I love the solopreneur.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for having me. How's the audio?
Right now, we're waiting for someone to respond, but let us know how the audio sounds.
We will all use our inner teacher voices. So I'm Jimena Yates, one of the co-founders of Build Within. Build Within is a technology company. We partner with governments and employers to help upskill individuals, especially those transitioning into technology roles or skilled trade roles like robotics and semiconductors. We have built a few products that are helpful for apprentices, especially. We have a registered apprenticeship platform, management platform for entities that use the model to bring new people into the tech workforce. We also have AI tools for productivity of new workers that can be career changers or people just graduated from college or in alternatives to college to learn new careers quicker. And we're based in DC, but we have also 2 team members here in California. We work in California. We have an office also in Tennessee, and we work with the governments of DC, Maryland, Tennessee. We're also the technology partner of the Software Development Apprenticeship Program of United Airlines, the National Restaurants Association Foundation, and others. So thanks for having me.
Hi again. I'm James Regan, Deputy Secretary for Workforce Development for the state of California. And so I touched on this a little bit before, but my entire role is to essentially build and imagine a government workforce of the future. My agency is the California Government Operations Agency, where our mission includes a lot of things, but in a nutshell, it's to make government more efficient. And so looking at all the state's operations and all the support services we provide to the 150-ish departments and 250,000-ish team members we have across state government, and figuring out how do we support them, making government more efficient, providing bigger, better, more equitable services across California state government. Right now, Government Operations Agency also is one of the leaders responsible for implementing Governor Newsom's executive order on generative AI from about a year ago, and really thinking through how can this technology help with our mission of making government more efficient, while also being mindful of how we support our workforce through that and really use it as a tool.
Joel Mayer, I'm the CEO of a workforce development company called Cybercrime. We're right here in backwoods of Folsom. And what we do is workforce development. Our tagline is bridging the gap between education and the workforce. And that education, you could say it's high school, or you could say it's the at any college level. We get folks that come through our program who have master's degrees in computer science, some have bachelor's, some have associates, some have high school diplomas. It all depends on the foundation that they walk in the door with and what the current demands of employers are. We use partners to actually deliver very specific training in fundamental IT skills, cybersecurity, data analytics, a whole realm of different IT skills. So oftentimes in college, students learn at some level of a lot of foundational information. And but commonly what happens is they can't get a job because what's the workforce is demanding today is different from what they kind of learned. But they do all walk away with a great foundation. So it's not a criticism of any of the education systems. So we try to provide that very specific training. On top of that, we also, in some cases, provide apprenticeship opportunities for individuals as well. And all of our work is grant funded. I don't even have a mechanism to charge individuals. So all of our work is either grant funded or it's funded through organizations who want to upskill their workforce. And
Thank you. And I'll kick it to Laura LeBlue online next. And I should have mentioned, Laura, I believe you're at a conference in Las Vegas right now and still took the time to join us. So I wanted to thank you for that and give it over to you.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, that's great.
Yes. All right, fantastic. Well, again, thank you for having me. I think like I'm kind of one of those things that's not like the other with this panel, because I am the senior managing editor of thought leadership here at ServiceNow. Essentially, my background is as a writer and journalist, and I work with really smart people to help them translate what they do, what they know into content that people can actually understand. So ServiceNow itself, for those of you who don't know, and most of you probably don't, is actually the world's fastest growing enterprise software company. We provide enterprises with an AI platform for business transformation, which basically means that we allow organizations to digitize their workflows across every corner of the enterprise so that they can be completely connected in their processes, bringing together people, bringing together, again, processes, and just connecting everyone. That's at a really, really basic level. But yeah, we don't have enough time to really go into it, everything we do. So specifically, the reason I'm here is because I led a special report that was in conjunction with our research partners named Pearson. They have workforce data specialists that we partnered with to understand how AI was going to be affecting the workplace 5 years from now. So what we did was to create an algorithm that went out to 8 different countries and scraped the data, any publicly available data, governmental job boards, et cetera, to understand exactly how AI was going to be impacting people's roles and the skills that they would need to do them. So I can inform you guys of that as we continue the conversation.
Thank you. And touching on what some of you all have brought up already, could you expand a little bit more on how your organization is utilizing or envisioning utilizing AI? And I think we'll go in the same order, although I may switch it up on you in the future.
Okay. After I left the community college chancellor's office, I actually took a little bit of a hiatus and spent about 2 years traveling. I was curious about the remote workforce, and there's a lot of folks that have ICT backgrounds that are doing jobs from all over the world in these little enclaves. And I kind of visited and did some observational studies. And that's where I kind of ran into like what was happening with Gen I. It kind of emerged there. So I was hosted at a WeWork in Sydney, Australia. And I started playing with this early tool called Synthesia. And being a professor, what it was, I could take my lectures and put it into this tool. And all of a sudden I'd have this like talking robot that was animated, and it just clicked like, oh my goodness, this is going to change how I teach, and this could potentially change how we instruct and inform on the consumer side as well. I had been working on a product to try to help people understand the home buying process, and I suddenly realized I could take all that content, quickly produce it without having to pay a lot of money in video, editing and all that stuff. So it suddenly became extremely cheap and efficient to do. So in about a month, I produced all these videos, had them uploaded on YouTube and Instagram. And I've been on that journey since. And so it's been a wild ride trying to learn how to use all the tools. I've been able to clone my voice so that I don't have to actually record my voice. I can use that to be the speaking voice as an educator. I've learned all kinds of tools. And so now I've packaged that into an app, which is called First Time Homebuyers Copilot. And the folks can watch the videos that I made in Sydney, and they can interact with the chatbot that I built on Chatbase. I have no technical skills, by the way. I've done all of this through no-code builders. But I've been able to integrate tools pretty efficiently myself and have released an app. I would encourage you to go look for it, try to get users to test it and see if it's something that can be developed. And honestly, when we get to the changing workforce and skills, folks can really do interesting things, but there is still a need for some deep technical skills. And there's going to be a broadening gap between those who really understand the back end of the thing that it's doing, which I don't know, and those who are trying to get things done from a business perspective.
So Build Within has a platform for, governments. We work a lot with governments and employers to run and manage on-the-job training programs or new hire programs, etc. And a lot of the work that our partners do can be convoluted because they have to, input data, maybe like, lots of names and last names and demographics. And if they have WIOA funded programs, there's also documentation. So the platform allows for case management and other things. And on top of that, we have tools for different users. And so for the new workers, we have several AI for productivity tools. And some of those are, for example, for anyone learning on the job how to become, for example, a digital marketing analyst, how they can use Midjourney or Figma or things like that. But also within the tools, we have tools for them to practice how to, create products faster, etc. So we have chatbots, we have a video training tool, we have a tool called Celeste, which is for a job seeker or apprentice to practice the interview process. We have a skills transfer tool that is helpful for anyone to say, look, I volunteered here, I was in the Boys and Girls Club, or I did lemonade stand, and how the skills transfer into new jobs. And we have also the skills matching algorithm, which is used to match people interests, abilities, and passions with careers. And so we use a lot of AI on top of this big database CRM and LMS platform to complement. So when someone new that didn't study that role can actually become productive and efficient faster. And, AI, like you said, this is a great panel here, lots of expertise, but every day is something new. So we've got, 3 tools, and we have 4, and then we have more, and every day there is a lot of iteration because the big ones, the giants that are pre-training the models, they're also changing a lot. We just had OpenAI became a for-profit, so there's all kinds of movement. So we build technology for AI productivity for access to the public. There are a lot of moving pieces there, but how we envision using it to your question is, we are all working. We're all from level 0 right now. We're all really setting that vision together. Our vision yesterday is very different probably from today because this is a moving walking area.
Nice. So in California state government, we have 5 what we call proofs of concept. Right now, we are looking at those 5 areas as potential uses for generative AI technology in partnership with leading, sort of industry experts and academia. So just kind of a quick summary, because we're in the middle of the proofs of concept, so that period hasn't ended yet. There are 2 in health and human services. So one is related to language access. So the potential that Gen AI may bring in that neural net language translation that may be able to bring that real-time translation to the next level with that accuracy and ability to take into account different dialects and slang, things like that. The second one in Health and Human Services is related to health facility inspections. So when a health facility inspector goes out, they're typically required to do a huge amount of visual inspection on a facility and how it operates, the conditions, and then type up or write up very lengthy reports related to the facility inspection. And so Gen AI could be a potential solution to add efficiency for health facility inspectors when it comes to the report writing. There are two in transportation and infrastructure. So one is, we call it traffic mobility insights. So the potential for Gen AI to serve as a solution for processing and analyzing vast amounts of traffic data, CCTV footage, et cetera, to look at where are the potential issues with traffic mobility, whether that is heavy traffic patterns or infrastructure issues with the state's highway system, for example. The second one in transportation is vulnerable road user. So it's looking in I think a sort of similar idea, looking at protecting and improving infrastructure safety when it's related to pedestrians, bicyclists, et cetera. Looking at where are there hotspots in sort of a big data management analytics capability to pinpoint those so that we can go out as a state and actually make the intersections and infrastructure safer for pedestrians and bicyclists, for example. The last one is related to customer service in our tax departments. So, when someone calls in with questions on how to file their taxes, there's thousands and thousands of pages of regulations related to tax law and policy, and our customer service agents could potentially benefit from Gen AI as a search and retrieve function by providing that customer service more efficiently and timely. But we will see all of these are in proof of concept phase, hoping that more to come on the results of that in the next few months.
So Cyber Proud, kind of in my introduction, I mentioned that we do very specific technical training, and each one of those training providers, AI is an element of those. But where Cyber Proud itself uses AI is I call it my Part B services. Part A services is the training. Part B services, when they're done with training, we call wraparound career services. That's resumes, cover letters, how to interview, how to network, all that stuff that goes into career services. So we're training the participants to do is how to actually use AI to develop all the resumes, the cover letters, all that. But it's not just like asking it, hey, create me a resume. They're very pointed and very specific to the jobs that they're applying for. They do a skills assessment. What are the skills, that they have in their tool chest? Soft skills, and then technical skills. What do they bring? Our average participant age is 31 years old. So a lot of them already come with work knowledge and work experience that is a component of these resumes. But what does the employer care about? If anyone's looked for a job lately, most of them are online and the resumes are reviewed online and they're reviewed by AI. So we're kind of, what I call is we're fighting fire with fire. Because there'll be traditionalists out there that say, well, you shouldn't use AI to write a resume. Well, the problem is the companies are using AI to actually assess your resumes. And what we do with the tool is we want to make sure that the skills, and we can't predict, any company or organization is going to have their own, what do they specifically look for? What percentage of skill A versus B? But we kind of make the assumption that certain skills and certain jobs, they might be in order listed on the job description of what is most important. If it's not listed as, okay, 80% of your job is this, and there's little pieces. So what we try to do is, start with a larger document with the participant, and then that filters down into, you take the job description, you kind of put it in there, And then it will kind of take that and format it into a specific resume. And the resume template that we use is also optimized for the what they call the applicant tracking systems. I call it the bots. It's the thing that's actually going to analyze your resume. Because when we start out with our participants, some of them have been taught over the years, oh, you want to have your picture on your resume. Oh, you want to have all this beautiful color brochure. The applicant tracking systems don't like that. They like certain font sizes, they like certain punctuations, and they like certain things. If not, it's gonna not work right by time. If anybody ever sees it, it's not gonna look right, or it's just gonna get dropped out into the virtual trash can. So we try to get them to learn how to use the tools effectively to actually tailor their resume. And then the next part is the cover letters. Well, the cover letters, we don't want them to sound like robots. So we actually teach them how to have the AI learn their writing style. You know, who are you as a person? So there's ways to create a writing style persona inside of your AI where you can put in different writing styles. You know, write a process, write a letter, write this, write that from your own words. You put it into the machine and it creates a writing style format for you as a person. So then when they marry that with their cover letter, say, okay, and it knows all this stuff about them, it actually creates a very personal cover letter that not only highlights their skills or it's the job description, but also talks about them as a person. And that makes it very human. For interview, if they are fortunate enough to land an interview, we teach them to how to use AI to even generate the interview questions that they'll possibly be asked, because you know that most employers are going to ask you things relative to that job description that you started out with your resume. Provide me 10 or 20 possible interview questions for this particular job. And if we have the researcher, we teach them how to ask the person on the other end, do you do behavioral interviews or technical interviews? If it's a mix of both or just behavioral, write me 20 behavioral interview questions. We want to do research on the company, go to the company's website and dump that into the AI. And all that's kind of ingredients to create the interview questionnaire. So you kind of know, you know, who are you in front of during this interview and to kind of master that. And anything else that you can gather as intelligence, gather that and put it into the mix and have it come up with the most logical thing. But on top of that too, we are human too. So we actually do mock interviews with them. We watch them because a lot of times that first interview is a virtual interview. And, you know, I have a talent manager who works for me who does these mock interviews, and she'll say, you know, I can see that you're reading from a document, or I can see you doing this, you know, just on your eye movement. So we go through various iterations with the individuals to get them where they are actually, it's coming from the heart of that. And I think it's a great use of the tool. Again, if you're not, and sometimes we'll have participants come in, I applied for 100 jobs with the same resume, the same cover letter. Well, guess what? Don't take it personal. It's just being booted out because you're not meeting whatever percentage that employer is asking for. So once we teach them these tools, and sometimes too, and it's a little less now, but when we first started doing this last January, people were thinking that was somehow cheating because they were told that you can't use AI for things like this. And we dispute those myths immediately and say, no, if you don't know how to use this tool, you're not going to have a job in a year. Not because of the job finding process, because employers are going to demand that you know how to use these tools. So.
Thank you. And we'll pose that same question to you, Laura, on how your organization is using or envisioning using AI.
Sure. And I'd love to build on what you just said there, because, you know, talking about AI skills and the integral nature of them in job seeking going forward. Someone told me, you know, I forget who I was talking with, but they said to me, like, basically AI skills are today and going to become what Microsoft, skills were back 20 years ago. We know you put it on your resume because you knew how to use the Microsoft suite. Well, now it's just table stakes, right? You assume that people are going to be able to use that, and that's the way that AI skills will go. So, from my part, you know, I have a different perspective. I'll give you a couple ideas, like from how I use and how our marketing and content development. How we use AI skills, like personally within the last week, I used Claude to create an outline for a webinar I'm going to be facilitating. So what I did is I went to Claude. I said, "Hey, I have these two people who are going to be who I'm going to be doing this webinar with. Give me an outline and questions based on this particular research document," which I then fed to it a PDF. And sure enough, just what would have taken me 4 hours, it did in 40 seconds. So just a really, powerful example of the kind of time savings you can get. I'm also somewhat obsessed with Notebook LM, which takes content and turns it into podcasts. It's a lot of fun. I highly recommend going and putting your own LinkedIn, like get your own LinkedIn URL, put it into Notebook LM, and then you get to hear people talk about how fantastic you are. It's good for the ego. Um, Additionally, there's another thing that we do. If I do have a webinar now, when I host a webinar, I can we use On24, which is a webinar hosting company. They can now instantly take the transcript from there, create a series of content. It'll take the transcript, then create a blog, and it will also create an email. So that I can then use that email to disseminate the webinar. And it will even take video clips that are the highlight of that webinar, and that I can then instantly use on social. So there's so many ways that personally I can use AI. Organizationally speaking, for ServiceNow, we've had AI baked into our platform for many, many years. And I think one of the more interesting ways that we use it in a product is one of our products called Talent Development, which actually allows organizations to get that look into the skill set of their employees. So not only do you know what their job title is, like that's the first dimension of knowing who you have in your organization, but then you can actually start to look at the skills they have. That's another dimension, and then you can start to go, okay, well, this person also like what did they bring into this company from their previous jobs that maybe we're not using this skill set for. And so you can really start to get a full understanding of who is working for you and how you can help create leverage all of those skills that are probably lying fallow for a vast number of the people that work for you. So that's one way that we utilize AI from a product point of view here at ServiceNow.
Thank you so much. So many great nuggets in that. Even at Valley Vision, we used to have to speedily type down all of the findings coming out of these employer panels, and now we use a tool to transcribe it to save everyone's fingers and wrists a little bit. So thank you for that. And I think just to switch it up a little bit, because you just had the microphone, Laura, I'll pitch the next question to you, and then Joel will come back on down the line here. And I know some folks have different business sizes and different needs, so please feel free to get creative with your response to this question, which is, what AI-related roles and skills are most needed in your organization, and which roles are hardest to fill? Laura, I'll kick it to you.
Ooh, great. You know what? I'm going to pop open if you don't mind, can I share a slide with you?
Yeah, absolutely. My wonderful colleagues here, I think, can give you screen sharing abilities.
Yeah, I just sent a request. So this will this actually tracks back to the research that I was telling you earlier, that because we actually started that research to understand what the skills in our ServiceNow talent ecosystem, what we needed to start training them for, so that in 5 years we would be able to support our own needs and the needs of our customers. So let me share this deck really quickly. And because this is a specific question, I won't go through all of these, but I will show you. We're going to share all of this, and I will happily make sure that you guys get this information so you can look at overall what our findings were. For ServiceNow specifically, within the next 5 years, we have mapped out a top, these top roles that are going to be necessary for us to service, to support the needs of all of our customers. These are not AI specific, but you'll see that some of them are going to be showing up. We're starting with technical project managers and technical and master architects. Then app developers are going to be, just incredibly in demand in our own ecosystem. And this is actually the total workforce. These numbers are the total United States workforce, but we're just mapping them to what our particular roles are that we are that we know that we need to skill people for. Specifically within AI, we know that we are going to need AI research scientists and AI systems engineers, over the next 5 years, actually into 2028, because we did this research a little bit earlier, 15,500 of each one of those within the United States are going to be additionally necessary to support our workforce development. So again, I could go on with this, but this is where we're seeing our ecosystem going, as well as the larger United States workforce demand over the next 5 years.
Thank you so much, Laura. And for folks, Laura has shared this report with us. We'll ensure to send this out with everyone with our post meeting materials. I know we're all always clamoring for the data, so I wanted to share that. And Joel, I'll kick it to you and we'll go down the line.
Sure. So as a small business, I mean, I have myself and one other employee. So everything we do, we use AI a lot for a lot of different functions and purposes within our organization. Again, all of our training is done by third parties. So what we do is the wraparound career services, like I mentioned. But other things we do is we have connections with a lot of employers. So an employer might come down and say, I need a person with this skill set. And what we do is we have all of our participants' resumes, and we kind of dump those resumes into our database and say, rank five people, the top 5 people that could do this job. And it ranks them, and it also tells me why. And those are the resumes that we send to that employer. It just saves a heck of a lot of time, and we don't want to waste their time either, because if we send them, 5 of the wrong resumes, number one, they're not going to consider any of our people, but also it's going to say, I'm not going to go back to you because you just wasted my time. So we try to get them is the best candidates possible that we have, and I get all kinds of weird requests. You'd think that there's, it's very limited. I mean, it's all over the map what employers need specifically. And sometimes it's a skill they didn't get from our training. They got it from something else that they've done, some home project that they worked on or something like that. So that's kind of how we've used it as a tool. But as a small business also, we've used it for everything from board meetings. We use a tool as well that records every meeting we have with anybody. When we have a 3-hour board meeting with multiple people in it, it literally will transcribe the entire meeting, and we're able to break that down into minutes. I can create my minutes. And if any of you ever been a secretary on a board, that can be like a week-long process. Well, I do that now in like an hour, and they're very good minutes, very high quality minutes. So it's just tools that you can use to save your time as a small business. And I always say that I got a couple PhDs, a couple MBAs that are at my fingertips every minute, and I do, and with this tool, and it's been amazing. So, and again, we try to instill this into any of our program participants as well. This is how these tools are used in the future, or you can use them yourself if you're an entrepreneur.
Love that. Thank you.
Nice. Yeah, as far as the roles and skills most needed, I am trying to keep myself from saying all of them, and so, but I will say, of course, there are the more technical components, right? Data scientists, you have your cloud DevOps, infrastructure specialists, cybersecurity specialists, right? All going to be essential. I will say one of the things, kind of taking a different angle on it for the sake of this conversation, is not to forget some of the highly important and yet not necessarily readily apparent roles that come with Gen AI technology. Roles like that shift from graphic designers to graphic artists, ensuring that Gen AI technology can be used for the sake of graphic artistry. It can generate something. It still needs a human in the loop to check that it meets our standards, to check that it meets our branding goals and marketing goals and messaging goals. And then also through this sort of proof of concept process, learning more and more what the standards are going to need to be for the sake of data readiness. And it doesn't require necessarily a data scientist to prep the data in a way that ensures that bias isn't inadvertently introduced into the model. And also things like roles and skills related to algorithmic monitoring, right? It would take a very highly experienced data scientist most of the time to develop an algorithm. But how are we doing output monitoring to ensure that the outputs are remaining as accurate and equitable and useful as possible? In particular, in a government setting, when you're looking for government services, usually someone is not looking for services that are 50% correct. And so the value comes from that real accuracy. And so when it comes to Gen AI, we need to think about what are the roles and skills related to output monitoring. And in our case, on a 24/7 basis. And then, of course, things around cybersecurity, I mean, has and likely will be heavily into the future of focus on cybersecurity, infrastructure, threat assessment, and then, of course, investigation. And so those are just a few examples, but I'll round it out in talking a little bit about how this technology has really also been, in our experience, a big push towards that product mindset and design thinking as well. So there will be, I think, based on the evidence we're seeing, a huge demand for roles like user researchers, stakeholder engagement specialists, product owners, the shift from project management to product management and product ownership. And also, sort of that product mindset and the human-centered design or design thinking are going to be roles and skills that I think will remain high in the future.
I'll try to go quick. I know that you have to, but there are two micro answers, I guess, to this question for me. One is that the number one skill that we see is the ability and desire of the person to learn. The curiosity, and that at any age, because it's a level playing field right now. So if there is something out on the web, a free tool, or within our ecosystem, we have built-in tools. But whoever plays with them the most, we see a direct correlation to efficiency and productivity of work. Yet, like you were saying, getting product done faster and better. And the second thing, I wanted to share an example. So in Washington, D.C., we are partners of the Department of Labor, local, the D.C. Department of Employment Services, and they started a consortium for workforce innovation to align the skills that the industry needs and the preparation that the local residents are getting through colleges or through boot camps or through community-based organizations or organizations like yours, and how those skills align to the needs. And so I think regionally, and this is a great event, I think change a little bit. So while there are commonalities in terms of the jobs, there is a different emphasis in the different places. So for example, in the DC area, cybersecurity is a huge field of work. There are thousands of jobs open because you have the Department of Defense, it's a national security area. Well, in New York or in California, Los Angeles, it's more like an entertainment industry. And so there is a little bit of opportunity there to create different, more specific and customized programs. But to finish, I will say that the skills that we see are very long, lots of it. So it could, if you are a good reader, good writer, that transfers into prompt engineering very well, because you have to have the stamina, the interest into the back and forth of the interaction. Engineering used to be a word only used for technical work. But today, a history major, a teacher, can do really well and probably much better than a traditional engineering, prompt engineering. And then, when we train people, we probably now can train them faster and differently. We don't have to go through the past, like to teach graphic design, this is what you do. Now today, no, you can actually take a shortcut because there are things that they don't need to do from scratch. They can use an AI to get them. And then the creativity of the worker, the interest, like that probably what makes them different. Like graphic designers, for example, is their ability to see a different world than with the rest of us. Like I'm an artist, they can see, then they can use that. They can spend more time in that. So it really is to elevate and magnify and augment the human capacity, the way that I see it.
So a brief answer is, as an entrepreneur, I don't have roles and skills I'm looking for. I work in ecosystems. So I work with other organizations, other individuals who are solopreneurs, nonprofits, for-profits, governments, all these different connector points that I'm coming into. So what I really work on is spaces around communities. I use software to do that, Mighty Networks, LinkedIn, those types of things. And we're building into the metaverse, trying to understand how the future works there. So you start thinking about what the skills are for our students that are trying to go in to these new work environments. What will they need to know? And so we've been developing grants into the creative economy, like you said, because these tools can actually allow people to be expressing and creating interesting art and things like that could be IP, and allow them to be an entrepreneur and sell that online through platforms like Patreon and others. And so there's different ways in which individuals can get the skills they need and create their own destiny with AI as an entrepreneur. And I think our programming here at the community college, like the business and entrepreneurship flyer I see there, as well as sitting right next to the ICT, blending those together creates a true opportunity for a new workforce. And having those entrepreneurial and innovative mindsets embedded into all the different organizations using something like AI can really create massively transformative effects. That's why I'm interested in this work.
Thank you. I was tempted to maybe throw a lightning last question at you all, but I suspect that there may be some questions in the chat from our viewers at home. And so Hillary, I'm wondering if you could raise that up for me.
I'm not seeing any questions, but we could just open it up.
Yeah, for folks here as well. Any questions for our panelists?
We were that good.
No, just real quick, I'm with the Polio group, and our whole mission right now is to get AI training to the underserved community. So how do you see this moving forward? Because one of the things, just like you mentioned, that with AI, you can cut the training.
Yes.
And so we're developing that. And I'll open it up to, how do you see now this AI helping these underserved communities upskill and then be able to, in a sense, profit with this great technology?
I have an answer for that. I'm excited to tell you. Like in our experience, so this consortium in DC, it serves only, well, for the most part, everyone can be served, but it has an emphasis on underserved, minority, job seekers, underemployed or unemployed. And the district has been very smart about thinking, how can we upskill them to better jobs? To jobs that are better paid, not just a job, like in the past, like let's just give them a job. No, let's just give them a really good job. And AI has been incredible to upskill people. So what I noticed is as part of the work that the consortium does is to create these accelerators. There are 7 weeks, and there is one accelerator on AI for business operations. And it starts with very quickly, like the history of AI, so people understand where it comes from, because they can get very confused with machine learning and Gen AI and LLMs. And so when people feel that they're confused about something, they lose their confidence. So it starts with, let's break it down. What happened in 1950? Where did the word come from? John McCarthy, and all of that. And like even talking about some of those movies that talk a little bit about the history of it, like the beginnings of it. And there are like 2 or 3 really good movies like Ex Machina, and you have a new one now, that's Her, but there's also one on Alan Turing from back in the day about decoding that, makes people think, oh my gosh, I can connect the dots, they feel excited, and you get them into thinking about AI as something that they understand and they can work with. And then from there, we build upon, and there are free tools out there like Teachable Machine. Is, you know, if you haven't used it, just go online and you can do, kids from ages 5 and up can use it, but anyone, and it does process audio and images, and you can pre-train a model. I'm sorry, yeah, pre-train a model really quickly, and it's fun. It's fun to do. So that's part of the 7 weeks, and that's like the second day, and they do something else, and they do a little bit of Python, and they do something else. And I'm telling you, these are folks who have been incarcerated or who never had the opportunity to go to college, or they're teachers who want to do something else. Like, it's okay, like people don't have to work in the classroom for 30 years. I used to be a teacher. There's so many great skills you can use, or people who are retired, that are 80 years old, we have a few that are at that age, that are like, I have juice to give, I have music, it's still in me. And so the beauty of this is that with the right training, with the right modules, that is a scaffolding, in 7 weeks, you can get someone to wrap up and use those tools and say, okay, I can do these things. I can design. I can do fine tuning. I can, maybe be a research administrator or anything like that. So, because you can actually package it up to that. So I think that the opportunity is great. Love, to talk more offline with you, but I think he's doing some great work too. Then today, the opportunity is to combine human work with the tools, using the tools as the fast track speed, like a speed train. But the driver is still a human. And so, that's how we win. It's not either or.
Thank you. And I saw Laura, your hand raised on that as well.
Yeah, I'll just quickly from our ServiceNow perspective. So we realized that the only thing impeding our organizational growth, our business growth, is going to be having the right talent in place in order to implement our product for our customers. If if you have a product that people want to buy, but you don't have anyone to implement and support it, then you're not going to grow as a company. So we created something called ServiceNow University specifically to recruit and train people who were from non-tech backgrounds in order to fill these roles that we knew we were going to be needing in order to grow. So the reason I bring this up is because between AI and low code, it has become the great democratizer for opening up opportunity to people who are not traditionally in the tech space to actually get great jobs that historically were not available to them. Like right now, you don't have to necessarily go and get a master's in computer science to work in the tech industry anymore, because there's so many transferable skills that can be utilized nothing against, hey, it's still good to have a computer science degree, just FYI. I mean, because we still need tech people, but there are just so many other ways that you can use the skills you have already, non-tech skills, into a more technical role, because AI is taking on the coding. It's taking on a lot of those skills that you normally would have had to acquire in other ways in the past. So I'll link to our page that actually has training tracks for multiple different ServiceNow personas that we're hiring, or our partners are hiring for. And this is how we're dealing with it, but it's really we could not do this without the use of AI to kind of to open up the field to people from all walks of life and all different tech proficiencies.
Thank you so much. And even I have to say, I love the idea of introducing people to some of those sci-fi movies. I love that idea. Anyways, we have one more piece of our program that we want to touch on before we close out today. But I want to say a huge thank you to our panelists for taking the time to come up to Folsom today to join us. Some folks from across the country in different areas. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us and just appreciate.
And thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Dr. Caleb Fowler back up to the stage, and I think I'll invite my colleagues, like Phil Kenny, up here as well.
Oh, it's.
I will make this brief. Just a few words about the program here at Folsom Lake College. About a month or so ago, our computer science department split off the AI activities that we're doing into its own department. And so these are the courses that that department is engaged in offering right now. And this information over here is the department chair, Suha Al-Jabori, with her contact information. She's got a certificate and is building out an associate's degree in that as well. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't remind you, computer science still does a lot of very important work in this space. In particular, we're active with programming and machine learning. Check out our catalog as well as data science. We have a lot of offerings in that. I'm going to just go ahead and put my name here, email.
Thank you. And for folks at home, we'll ensure to include contact information for all our speakers today, so folks can reach out. Thank you so much. I wanted to share this. We'd like to, highlight some of these different offerings. To share that information, but continuing to make that connection between education and industry. And I'll pass it to you, Liz.
Awesome. Well, with that, we've come to the end of our session. Thank you, Dr. Fowler, for helping us host it here at Folsom Lake and just being such a fun participant. It's always great to host it at Folsom Lake. We have a great time whenever we do. Thank you everyone for joining us, for the speakers, the panelists, and all the participants in Zoom and in the room. Thank you. If you have any questions at the end of this, my information and Caitlin's information are up on the board. Please feel free to reach out. Please fill out the survey, everybody. We really do look at it. I know sometimes when we offered a survey, you go, is anyone ever looking at this? I promise you I do. I look at it like every month. It is very helpful to us. We look at it at the end of the year to see if we can improve it all. So please fill out the survey. We'll love to see it. And keep an eye on your email. You're going to see a recording of this presentation, a report come out, and all of the slide decks, and all of the different information that got mentioned. I know there's a lot of stuff that we're going to end up linking to you guys. So keep an eye on the email for that. With that, we'll wrap it up. I say thank you one last time.
Thank you. And let us not. We'll be sending the survey out over email, and I will be checking it tomorrow to see if anybody has feedback. So that will save you. Thank you.
Thank you.